Rylan Voss ducked as a spray of sparks shot across the dim hangar, metal groaning under the pressure. The emergency lights flickered red, casting jagged shadows across the walls stacked with tools and spare ship parts. Something had crashed outside, something enormous. The ground trembled beneath his boots as a heavy metallic thud echoed through the cavernous space. He wiped the sweat from his brow, heart hammering, and ran toward the main bay doors. Through the smoke and flickering lights, he saw it. A massive ship like nothing he had ever seen twisted against the hangar floor. Its hull burned in jagged streaks of blue fire, and steam hissed from vents that looked like gashes on living skin. The craft wasn't just damaged, it was alive. A faint pulse of light ran across its surface, almost as if it were breathing. Rylan didn't hesitate. He grabbed a fire-resistant blanket and raced toward the ship. Every instinct screamed to stay back, but he couldn't leave it to burn. He could hear the faint, rhythmic clanking from inside, and something about it made his stomach twist. It was alive, he was sure of it, but what kind of life had scales made of metal? The hatch shuddered violently. Sparks flew and the sound of tearing metal filled the hangar. Rylan froze for a split second as a glowing clawed hand shot through the opening. He jumped back instinctively, his mind screaming at him to run. But curiosity, stubbornness, and a human need to act outweighed fear. He grabbed a loose steel rod from the floor and held it like a shield. The hand lingered, luminous and strangely elegant, its tips curling in a slow, deliberate motion. Then the rest of the creature followed, its head massive and sleek, with eyes that glowed like molten gold. It was enormous, yet there was a strange intelligence in those eyes. They fixed on him, sharp and calculating, as if weighing his worth. Rylan's chest tightened. Every nerve in his body shouted danger, but he couldn't back away. He forced himself to speak, his voice rough from tension. I'm going to help you. Just stay still. The dragon, or whatever it was, tilted its head, a slow, deliberate gesture that felt like a test. Sparks continued to erupt from the ship's damaged hull, sending shards of metal skittering across the floor. Rylan's eyes scanned the wreckage, calculating. If the ship's core blew, it would tear the hangar apart. He sprinted toward the nearest console and ripped open the access panel, wires sparking and sizzling under his touch. Come on, he muttered, fingers working fast. His hands shook, but he forced them steady. He rerouted power, shunting energy away from the damaged reactor sections. A hiss of steam filled the air, and the glow of the fire dimmed slightly. The ship's pulse slowed, a subtle, almost grateful rhythm. The creature hissed, a sound that vibrated in the metal walls. Rylan froze, sweat running down his temple. He realized the hiss wasn't anger. It was attention. It was watching, learning. Every move he made mattered. One wrong step, one loose spark, and it could strike. But the human instinct to fix, to act, to survive took over. He didn't flinch. Then a tremor shook the floor. Another crash from outside, the hangar doors shuddered under the impact. Rylan's mind raced. Something else was coming. He could feel it in his chest, a low vibration that wasn't the ship. He had no idea what was out there, but he knew he couldn't leave the dragon or himself unprotected. With a deep breath, Rylan grabbed a toolbox and climbed onto the ship's hull, leaning over the scorched panels. Sparks flew dangerously close, singeing his sleeve. He twisted a failing pipe and patched it with makeshift clamps, ignoring the blistering heat. The ship's pulse stabilized a little more. A faint shimmer ran across the creature's scales, acknowledgement perhaps. Relief? Or curiosity? He didn't know, and he couldn't afford to wonder. Then it happened, a metallic groan from the ship's belly, louder than before. The hatch trembled, and the glowing hand reappeared, this time dragging a slender metallic tube toward him. The dragon's eyes fixed on him, narrowing in a way that made his stomach knot. He could feel it judging him, not just for skill but for courage, for heart, for choice. Rylan gritted his teeth. I don't know who you are. I don't know what you want. But I won't let this ship die. Not on my watch. The dragon paused, tilting its head slowly as if understanding. Sparks erupted nearby, forcing him to shield his face. But then, almost imperceptibly, the creature shifted, stepping back just enough to let him work. Its tail lashed once, narrowly missing a crate of tools, and Rylan jumped down, heart racing. He had a moment, just a small one, but he fixed the next conduit, redirecting the core energy. The blue flames dimmed further, stabilizing. He exhaled hard, leaning against the hull. For a heartbeat, everything seemed to pause. The hangar was silent except for the hiss of cooling steam. Then the dragon's voice, or thought he couldn't tell, echoed in his mind, soft but firm. Survive this, and prove your worth. Rylan's heart skipped. He had no idea what that meant. But the warning lingered like a shadow over his success. He straightened, wiping soot from his brow. The hangar was quiet, the immediate danger slowed, but the feeling of being judged, and watched, gnawed at him. Then a deep rumble from outside made the floor shake again. Ryland's blood ran cold. Something else had come. Something huge. And the dragon's eyes, glowing like molten gold, never left him. Ryland's hands shook as he tightened the last clamp on the ship's energy conduit. The blue sparks dimmed, but the hum of the core still thrummed like a heartbeat. He wiped sweat from his forehead, trying to steady his breathing. The dragon remained motionless, its head lowered slightly, eyes never leaving him. There was a weight in its gaze, heavy, calculating, and impossibly intelligent. Ryland had no time to wonder what it meant. The hangar doors groaned, and the tremor under his boots warned that something outside wasn't waiting politely. A sudden blast rocked the hangar. Dust and smoke filled the air. He spun toward the sound, heart hammering, and caught movement at the edge of the hangar bay. Shadowy figures, humanoid but armed with energy weapons that glowed green, were climbing over the debris of a nearby crash. Scavengers. They were not here to trade, not here to negotiate. They were here to take. And if they tried to breach the dragon's ship, the consequences would be deadly. Ryland's mind raced. He had seconds to act. He scanned the cluttered hangar, taking stock of what he could use. Broken drones, spare ship parts, cables, and panels, everything became a potential weapon or shield. He yanked a long, flexible conduit and looped it around a hanging crane arm. Sparks shot as he connected it to a nearby power node, improvising a trap. He whispered to himself, come on, work." The scavengers advanced, stepping over twisted metal and broken crates, their rifles humming with energy. One reached for the ship's hull. Ryland slammed a control panel, redirecting a surge through the conduit. Electricity arced through the floor, striking the first intruder. He didn't watch them fall. He couldn't afford to. Another figure jumped toward the dragon's open hatch, and instinctively, Ryland grabbed a heavy wrench and swung, knocking the attacker sideways. The dragon hissed, a sharp, reverberating sound that vibrated in the metal walls. Its wings stretched slightly, enough to show the glimmering membrane and jagged talons, yet it did not strike. Instead it watched, waiting. Its eyes locked on Ryland's, a silent challenge in the depths of molten gold. Ryland understood that every move mattered. One misstep, one miscalculation, and the ship would erupt in flames, or worse, the creature might lash out. He took a deep breath, forcing calm into his muscles. He could do this. He had survived worse wrecks alone, and now he had to survive with a living, breathing judgment hanging over him. He maneuvered the last trap into place, a tangle of cables leading to the hangar door's structural supports. A pull, a spark, and the doors would slam shut if the scavengers advanced too far. Small victories. Each one gave him a moment of control in a situation that seemed impossible. A new alarm chimed in the hangar, a warning from the dragon's ship. The panel in front of Ryland blinked frantically. The core was unstable again, but not critical yet. He glanced at the glowing creature, whose head had tilted slightly as if assessing his work. The dragon exhaled slowly, releasing a subtle, warm energy that brushed against Ryland's face, almost like acknowledgement. He swallowed hard. It wasn't trust, yet, but it was closer than before. One scavenger leaped onto the hull, almost reaching the dragon. Ryland moved before thinking. He slid along the edge of the ship, wrench in hand, and landed on the intruder's back. Sparks flew as metal scraped against metal. He wrestled the attacker, using leverage and speed instead of strength, and shoved him down into the tangle of energized cables. The man screamed, caught in the trap, but Ryland had no time to watch. Another attacker had flanked him, aiming straight at the ship's reactor. Ryland spotted a maintenance hatch nearby and pulled a loose panel free. He shoved it across the intruder's path, causing him to stumble, buying precious seconds. His heart pounded. One mistake and the core could overload. He twisted a valve on the ship's hull, releasing a controlled vent of energy that knocked the intruder back without damaging the vessel. The dragon hissed sharply but did not strike, and for a moment Ryland felt a strange bond. It was testing him, perhaps measuring courage and intelligence under pressure. Smoke thickened. Sparks erupted near the core again. Ryland's vision blurred from heat and adrenaline, but he forced focus. Every wire he touched, every panel he shifted stabilized a little more of the ship. The scavengers were relentless, pressing closer, but Ryland was faster. He used the ship's damaged hull as cover, rolling, flipping, and striking in quick succession. One by one the attackers were slowed, stunned, or tangled. His makeshift traps held long enough to make a difference. The dragon stepped fully into the bay, wings stretching wide. The air vibrated with its presence. Not an attack, yet, but a warning. Ryland's stomach clenched. He realized the creature could crush the intruders, or him, with ease. Yet it did nothing. It waited, watching, testing, as if it had already judged something deeper than skill or courage. A final tremor shook the hangar. One scavenger tried to flee, but his rifle sparked against a live cable Ryland had rigged. The shock sent him sprawling, unconscious. Ryland exhaled, chest heaving, adrenaline still burning. He had held them off. The dragon's eyes flickered, the gold deepening in hue. A pulse ran across its scales, slow, deliberate, acknowledging that Ryland had met danger head-on and survived. But just as he dared a small, fleeting smile, the hangar doors shook again. Something bigger than scavengers was coming, massive, unstoppable, and beyond anything Ryland had faced. His pulse quickened. The dragon tilted its head toward the source of the tremor, muscles tensing. Ryland knew instinctively, the next challenge would test not just his hands and mind, but his very courage. And the glowing golden eyes of the dragon fixed on him with unyielding focus, as if silently asking, "Are you ready to prove yourself, or will you fail?" Ryland's hands ached, his chest burned from running, swinging and dodging sparks, but he didn't stop. The tremor in the hangar grew stronger, shaking loose panels and sending small pieces of debris skittering across the floor. The dragon remained still, its golden eyes fixed on him, glowing like molten judgment. For a moment, Ryland thought he understood the weight behind that gaze. It wasn't merely observation. It was testing. It was measuring whether he could think under pressure, survive the impossible, and make choices that mattered. He took a cautious step closer to the ship. The core had stabilized somewhat, but the faint hum still pulsed like a heartbeat under strain. Something inside the hull called to him, something he didn't understand yet. Ryland crouched by a vent, peering into the inner workings of the vessel. The panels were covered with alien symbols and circuits that didn't follow human logic. He had no formal knowledge of alien tech, yet some part of his mind, the part that never quit under pressure, knew that if he rerouted the flow through the auxiliary conduits, the system might stabilize further. As his fingers brushed the controls, a hidden panel clicked open on its own. Dust and sparks fell as a small compartment revealed itself, a secret chamber beneath the core. Inside were strange data cores, glowing softly with a faint blue light, humming with alien energy. Ryland froze. His heart thumped so loudly he feared the dragon could hear it. He reached forward cautiously and touched one of the cores. The moment his fingers made contact, a holographic display sprang to life. Star maps, battle logs, and scenes of other planets flashed before his eyes. Histories of civilizations that had risen, fought, and fallen under the scrutiny of the dragon. His stomach turned. This wasn't just a ship. It wasn't just a creature. This was a judge. The dragon's reputation, its purpose, was encoded in the ship itself. And now Ryland was part of its assessment. Every move he had made, every choice under pressure, was being weighed against millennia of judgment. He swallowed hard, the realization settling like a stone in his chest. He had stumbled into something far bigger than survival. He had entered the domain of interstellar law, where lives, civilizations, and futures could hang on a single decision. Ryland's mind raced. He could leave. He could abandon the ship and run, save himself. But that wasn't who he was. He had risked his life once, and now the dragon's ship depended on him. He couldn't turn away, not when the creature had already shown subtle trust, not when the vessel's survival meant something bigger than himself. His hands shook, but determination set in. He had to finish what he started. A low vibration ran through the hangar, shaking the floorboards beneath him. The scavengers weren't finished. The tremors weren't from them, they were something larger. Ryland glanced at the dragon, whose wings shifted slightly, producing a subtle wind that brushed his face. The golden eyes narrowed, and for the first time, the creature emitted a sound that wasn't a hiss or growl. It was a vibration in his mind, a mental pressure that felt like words. The next step will decide more than the ship. Choose wisely. The message made Ryland's pulse spike. He didn't understand how the creature communicated, but he knew the warning was real. One wrong move, one miscalculation, and the dragon could judge him unworthy, not just for survival but for the trust it had tentatively granted. He straightened, setting his jaw, and turned back to the inner chamber. He carefully removed one of the glowing cores and connected it to the auxiliary conduits. Energy crackled along the connections, humming in harmony with the ship's pulse. Sparks shot from the connections, and he yanked his hands back just in time to avoid being burned. The ship shuddered, light flickering across the hull, and then slowly the hum evened out. Rylan felt a surge of triumph, a small victory but meaningful. The dragon hissed softly, but it wasn't anger. It was acknowledgement. It was the kind of approval that only a creature judging millennia of civilizations could give. Then, without warning, the ship shuddered violently. Panels ripped free and a new hatch opened, revealing something Rylan had not anticipated. A secondary compartment with more alien tech, pulsating with an ominous red light. His heart skipped. It was clearly some kind of alert system, and it hadn't been triggered before. The energy readings spiked dangerously. One misstep, one wrong touch, and the entire core could go critical. Rylan's fingers flew over the panels, trying to analyze the unfamiliar circuits. Sweat streamed down his face, burning his eyes, but he refused to stop. The dragon watched silently, its wings partially extended, tail coiled like a spring ready to strike, but it did nothing. Its gaze was heavy, expectant, as if it already knew what choices he would make. Suddenly, a loud alarm erupted from the ship itself. A holographic projection flashed in front of him. Scenes of other humans who had been here before, their attempts at judgment recorded for the dragon's archives. Every failure, every misstep replayed in slow, agonizing detail. Rylan's stomach churned. He realized that the dragon wasn't merely testing him for survival. It was judging his intelligence, his courage, his morality. He couldn't bluff. He couldn't guess. Every action mattered. He focused, shutting out fear. Step by step, he rerouted the energy flows, stabilizing the core. Sparks still flew, and the air smelled of ozone, but the pulse slowed. The ship hummed in quiet resonance. The dragon's eyes flickered, and a subtle warmth brushed against Rylan's mind, almost like gratitude, almost like trust, but not yet full acceptance. Then a deep vibration shook the hangar. Not the scavengers, not the ship, it was something external. Massive, heavy, approaching fast. Rylan's pulse leapt. The dragon stiffened, wings stretching fully now, and golden eyes fixed on the distant doors. Rylan didn't need to ask. Whatever was coming would test him more than anything before. His hands tightened on the panels. He couldn't back down. Not now. Not when the stakes were higher than survival. And in the glow of molten gold eyes, Rylan understood one terrifying truth. The dragon's judgment was not finished, and the next decision he made could change everything. Not just his fate, but the fate of the ship, and perhaps something far larger he could not yet comprehend. Rylan's breath came in short, ragged gasps as the hangar floor trembled beneath him. Sparks flew from damaged panels, and the smell of scorched metal filled his lungs. Outside, he could hear it, a deep, guttural roar that shook the walls, followed by the rhythmic pounding of massive engines. Whatever was approaching wasn't human. It wasn't scavengers. It was something enormous, something unstoppable. His heart raced, but he couldn't panic. Not now. The dragon shifted, spreading its wings, a shimmering membrane stretching wide across the hangar bay. Its tail coiled like a living whip, and the scales along its back glinted with molten gold in the flickering light. Rylan's pulse spiked. The creature was injured, yes, but even wounded, it radiated power that made him feel small and fragile. Yet for some reason it did not attack. It waited. It observed. Its eyes locked onto his as if silently asking, "Will you rise to this, human? Will you act when everything seems impossible?" He swallowed hard. He had no choice. The scavengers had fled after their last failed attempt, but the tremors, the roar, the pounding outside, whatever this was, would not wait. The dragon's ship still hummed with unstable energy. If the engines flared now, if the external force struck before the vessel could fully stabilize, the hangar would be destroyed, along with him and the dragon. Rylan took a deep breath and scanned the cluttered bay. Broken machinery, loose panels, dangling conduits. It was chaos, but it was also opportunity. He grabbed a heavy wrench and sprinted toward the ship's open maintenance hatch. Sparks showered over him as he worked, connecting wires and redirecting unstable energy flows. His hands burned, his muscles screamed, but he ignored it. Every move had to count. The dragon hissed sharply, a low vibration that ran through the hangar. It was warning, encouragement, and challenge all at once. Rylan adjusted the conduits, linking them to auxiliary nodes along the hull. Sparks arced dangerously, but he pressed on. The hum of the core steadied slightly. One small victory, but it was enough to buy time. A shadow fell across the hangar. Rylan looked up and froze. Through the open doors he saw it, a massive, dark silhouette moving faster than the eye could track. It slammed into the hangar with a force that sent him sprawling. Metal groaned and buckled under the impact. Dust and smoke swirled around him. This was no ordinary assault. it was a force of destruction, a living storm of metal and fury. The dragon let out a roar that shook Ryland to his core. It moved instinctively, positioning itself between the ship and the incoming threat. A burst of energy shot from its wings, a protective barrier shimmering like liquid gold. Ryland realized the creature was shielding him, even in its weakened state. His chest tightened with a mix of fear and awe. He had never relied on anyone, or anything, like this. Without thinking, he leapt to his feet and ran toward the nearest control panel. The ship's auxiliary systems were still unstable, but he could stabilize them enough to give them a fighting chance. Fingers flying over unfamiliar alien controls, he rerouted power, releasing bursts of energy to counteract the tremors shaking the hull. Sparks flew in every direction, some scorching his arms, but he gritted his teeth and continued. A massive claw slammed into the floor near him, sending debris flying. Ryland dove, rolling beneath a hanging panel that splintered under the impact. His heart pounded so violently it was almost deafening. The dragon's tail lashed out, knocking the attacker back with a force that sent him sprawling across the hangar. Ryland realized the creature wasn't just shielding him, it was fighting alongside him, using precise, controlled strikes rather than blind fury. He took a shaky breath and returned to the ship, connecting the last of the rerouted conduits. The core stabilized further, its pulse slowing to a steady rhythm. A small glow ran across the dragon's scales, like acknowledgement. Relief flashed in his chest, but there was no time to savor it. The approaching force slammed again, shaking loose more debris. Ryland had one chance. He grabbed a large panel and connected it to the hangar's energy grid. Sparks shot across the floor as he activated the makeshift defense. The panel arced with electricity, creating a temporary barrier that deflected the next massive blow. He ducked, rolling to the side as the hangar shook violently, metal screeching under the strain. The dragon hissed, then shifted closer to him, its massive head lowering so that their eyes met. In that instant, Ryland felt a strange connection, as if the creature were speaking not with words but with understanding. "We survived together," the eyes seemed to say. He nodded, not aloud but in determination. He ran back to the core and twisted the final valve. The ship shuddered, then hummed steadily, its engines stabilizing. Sparks still flew, but the immediate danger lessened. The dragon exhaled, a wave of energy washing over the hangar, pushing back debris and stabilizing the air. Ryland stumbled back, chest heaving, eyes wide. They had made it, at least for now. But just as he allowed himself a fleeting moment of relief, the hangar doors shook violently. The tremor wasn't coming from the storm outside. It was coming from something deeper, something massive moving beneath the floor, something that had not yet revealed itself. Ryland froze, sensing that this was not the end. Not yet. The dragon's golden eyes narrowed, wings bracing. Its tail coiled, muscles tensing like a spring. Ryland's stomach clenched. Whatever was coming next, it would test him far beyond anything he had faced so far. And then a deep, resonating rumble filled the hangar, a sound that shook his bones and made the lights flicker. The dragon hissed sharply, its head lowering in a warning that was part threat, part guidance. Ryland swallowed hard, gripping the edge of the hull. He understood in that instant that the next moments would demand everything he had: courage, intelligence, and sheer will. The hangar doors buckled again, revealing a shadow that dwarfed the dragon itself. Sparks flew, alarms blared, and Ryland's heart raced faster than ever. The challenge was no longer just survival. It was proving that humanity, him alone, could face the impossible. And the dragon's eyes never left him, molten gold glowing brighter, as if silently judging whether he would rise or fall. Ryland's legs trembled, his arms burned from hours of frenzied work, yet he didn't stop. The hangar shook again, louder this time, as the massive shadow loomed just outside the doors. It wasn't a creature, at least not in any form he recognized. It was a living machine, dark and immense, pulsing with energy that made the air hum and his teeth vibrate. Every instinct screamed for him to run, but he couldn't. Not when the dragon's ship teetered on the edge of collapse. Not when the golden eyes of the creature who had silently judged him for hours were fixed on his every move. He sprinted toward the core, dodging falling debris and sparks that sizzled the metal floor. The dragon shifted beside him, wings partially extended to shield the vessel, tail coiled like a whip ready to strike. Its glowing eyes flicked to the incoming menace and back to Ryland. That unspoken command, act, hit him with full force. He had one chance to stabilize the ship and face the threat or lose everything. Ryland slammed his hands on the control panel, rerouting the auxiliary conduits he had set up earlier. Sparks flared, some brushing his arms, leaving painful burns, but the core began to hum steadily. His makeshift defense of energized panels and cables flickered, a tenuous barrier holding back the force at the doors. He clenched his jaw and twisted another valve, venting excess energy into a neutral conduit. The ship groaned, but it held. The dragon hissed sharply, wings flaring, yet did not attack. It was waiting for him to finish, to prove his worth fully. A sudden blast hit the hangar's roof, sending a shower of metal and dust down upon them. Rylan dove, scraping his shoulder, but he didn't hesitate. Through the haze, he glimpsed the massive shadow shifting. A mechanical behemoth with pulsating lights that made it look alive, intelligent, and deadly. It was testing the ship, probing for weaknesses. Rylan's chest tightened. One wrong move, one misrouted conduit, and the entire hangar would erupt in flames, or the ship would be torn apart. He shook off fear and moved faster. Using a combination of strength and clever timing, he twisted the remaining unstable panels, channeling energy from one section of the hull to another. Sparks flared and hissed, but each connection stabilized another part of the ship's core. The humming grew steady, the ship's pulse slowing to a calm, even rhythm. The dragon's wings lowered slightly, a subtle shift of acknowledgement. Rylan allowed himself a flicker of relief. He had done it, at least for now. But the threat was far from over. The shadow slammed into the hangar doors with a force that rattled Rylan to his core. Dust and metal rained down, and the massive machine began to squeeze through the broken threshold. Rylan's mind raced, calculating every possibility. He had one tool left, a gravity-stabilizing module from a damaged drone. If he could attach it to the hull's energy conduit, it might create a short, controlled pulse strong enough to repel the intruder without destroying the ship. He climbed onto the hull, the dragon's body brushing against him, a living shield of warmth and power. The golden eyes watched him intently, as if measuring courage, precision, and resolve all at once. Rylan attached the module and hesitated only for a heartbeat before activating it. A pulse of energy surged through the hangar, a shimmering wave that met the mechanical threat head-on. Sparks flew, alarms screamed, and the shadow recoiled, its massive form lurching back, staggered but not destroyed. The dragon's hiss turned into a low, vibrating roar. It stepped forward, coiling its tail and adjusting its wings to add its own power to the pulse. The combination of human ingenuity and dragon might sent the massive intruder staggering again, and this time, it retreated just far enough for the hangar to stabilize. Rylan fell back, chest heaving, covered in soot, sweat, and minor burns. His hands shook, but his heart was full of triumph. They had survived. The dragon lowered its wings fully, tail coiling gently, and stepped toward him. Its molten gold eyes met his, and for the first time, Rylan felt a warmth that wasn't fear or judgment but trust. Slowly, it exhaled a soft wave of energy that swept over him, calming the air, stabilizing the remaining sparks and settling the hangar. He staggered forward, hand extended instinctively, and the dragon lowered its massive head, letting him touch the metallic scales that shimmered like living gold. "You survived," Rylan whispered, awe breaking through exhaustion. "We survived." The dragon tilted its head, emitting a low, resonating vibration. Not words, not sounds, but a message he somehow understood. "You acted when it mattered. You chose courage, intelligence, and heart. You are worthy." Rylan allowed himself a moment to breathe, to feel the weight of what they had accomplished. The ship's core hummed steadily, the hangar was intact, and the immediate threat had been repelled. He looked around at the debris, the scorched panels, the damaged tools, and realized something astonishing. Despite the danger, he had done this. Alone, with a creature far beyond human comprehension, he had faced the impossible, and won. But the relief was fleeting. A low rumble vibrated through the hangar floor. It wasn't from the previous intruder. Something massive was moving beneath them, something even older and larger than the mechanical threat. Rylan's chest tightened. The dragon's tail coiled again, muscles tense, wings half-raised. Its golden eyes shifted toward the floor, narrowing, focusing. Rylan realized with a mix of fear and awe that their victory had only revealed the next challenge. Whatever lay beneath the hangar, it was ancient, intelligent, and powerful, and it had taken notice of them. The dragon hissed softly, not in warning but almost in anticipation. Rylan straightened, brushing soot from his face, gripping the edges of the ship's hull. He had survived, proven his courage, and earned trust, but the story wasn't over. Not even close. And in the molten gold eyes fixed on him, Rylan knew this was only the beginning. Something far larger than the hangar, the scavengers, or even the dragon itself was waiting. A pulse of determination surged through him. Whatever came next, he would face it. Human courage, intelligence, and heart had brought him this far, And he wouldn't stop now. The hangar trembled again, shadows moving beneath the floor. Ryland's gaze met the dragon's one final time. Are you ready for what comes next? He swallowed hard, tightened his fists and nodded. The next adventure was already unfolding.